Good afternoon, this is Beth and welcome to my channel Watercolor Painting in the Afternoon. Today I thought I would try this lovely picture I found online of a boat, and I loved the line that it formed from right to left as the water comes in on the shore, and it just goes right up the boat. So there's a line from right to left, right up out of the page, and I thought that made a wonderful shape to practice painting and to work with. Shape makes the composition, really. It's shape and line. And so those two things I wanted to practice. Now, I told you earlier that I was working on a watercolor course by Leslie Frontz, and this was one of her lessons, was shape, and another one was line. So that is exactly what I wanted to work on today. So I'm just drawing in the boat and the shoreline and the actual horizon, and making sure I didn't want to get all of the little tiny details just right. I don't have to do that. But I did want to get as many of them as I needed in order to get a good representation of what I was seeing. All right, and at this point, what I've done is just put a piece of tape, painter's tape, across the page so that I don't have to worry about the horizon line. So the clouds in the sky were quite dark and gray, so I began there, painting up sort of a graduated wash until I get to mid-page, and then there was a bank of darker clouds. So I wanted to put those in. Now keep in mind, all of this is going to dry a lot lighter. It always surprises me, and I've been doing this for a while, and it surprises me every time just how much lighter things dry in watercolor. So you really have to think about your values and am I going to get this, dark enough? Is this going to be too light? Here I'm just adding some texture in above this darker bank of clouds, and I keep thinking I might need to get that darker. This is one of the hardest things for me. I've really struggled with getting that first layer dark enough, and I'm almost always having to go back and glaze over. But you know what? That's okay. They say that gets better with experience. I'm not sure it does. In my case, it might not. But I'm working on it. We're trying. So just continuing to put in the textures in the clouds and make sure you can actually see some texture, because there was some in the photograph. And now that I've gotten that done, I'm going to take the water. I'm going to try to paint the water in the far distant horizon, and it's lighter than the water that's close up. All of the water in this photograph appeared sort of green. So what I did, I took a sap green and I added a little bit of titanium buff to it from Dale and Rowney, and then I added just a little bit of neutral tint to that green to just dull it down a little bit and make it not quite such a bright springy green, because it's not really a spring green. So then I wanted to paint the water in the foreground, and that water was actually a good bit darker than the far away water. So I added a lot more gray to it and a little bit more sap green, and just kind of let those two colors mingle together and form this darker shade of the sea. Here I'm kind of scalloping the edges so that I get the sense of water coming in and lapping on the shore. I think here I was trying to paint in the sand, and I used, if I'm remembering right, I used some of that titanium buff and perhaps some form of brown, either burnt umber, just just a small bit, or sepia, one of those. But I used that in concert with the buff titanium, and I think it made a fairly good sand color. And here I was just cleaning up the edge of the water. If you're painting along with me today, I hope you're enjoying yourself, and if you are, remember to give me a really quick little thumbs up and leave me a comment. It helps me to get my channel out there on YouTube. I have switched to a smaller brush, and I'm going to start putting more details in the painting now, starting with the boat itself. The boat was a couple of colors, and it was a very light buff color, and then another dark gray. And one side was more shaded than the other. I think this photograph was taken on a cloudy day, so the shadows are not terribly deep. However, you can make a decision about how dark you want your shadows to be so that there's more contrast. I started out just painting what I was seeing, and I thought it needed more. So later on I went back and I added a little bit darker shadow on that shadow side. I was taking a little bit of that gray out there so it would be more of a contrast. And then adding more buff titanium, adding more contrast as I go along, because I keep seeing how it's drying and how it needs more. So, and I painted this shadow, and it too dried so much lighter that I had to go back and fix it. And you'll see at the end of this video how much I fixed the values on this painting. I thought I got most of it pretty accurately, but you know, in the end you end up going back and maybe tweaking more things than you'd like to admit, but that is what I had to do. And there were just little bits and bobs on top of the boat that might have been, I don't know, somebody's cup they were drinking out of, and they put it up on the stern there, but or whatever you call that. What's the front of the boat? I don't know. I don't know boats. I don't know boating. But there were a lot of little things up on the boat, and I just represented those things. You don't have to paint all those silly little details. You just have to fool the eye into seeing them. And here I just took my marker and made the railing, because the railing was just these little barely seen black lines in the photograph, and I didn't want to use a brush because I knew that I would make them too thick. Now here what I'm doing is painting in the sail, and the sail had a nice dark navy blue shadow on it. So there's a little pop of that navy blue color in this painting that I really like. And here, I'm using a rigger. I'm using a liner brush, and I'm trying to paint the masts, and then all of those little ropes and all kinds of things that come down and attach themselves to the mast. Oh, I hate doing that because my hand is not terribly steady. And so, I've seen people do these, the masts and all of this stuff, using the rigger with just one beautiful, quick, confident stroke. And if I did that, my lines would end up in the middle of the page. I just don't think I'm built that way. So, yeah. So that was the hardest part for me, was getting all of these little ropes and pulleys and things like that in the right place. I don't know about you. If you can do it that way, you should. If you can do one confident stroke, that's how it's going to look best, because I kept having to go back and kind of clean it up, and you don't want to have to do that. But if you do, it's not, it's not the end of the world. I somehow managed. It could have looked better, but, everything could look better. This is the part of the painting where yours truly starts to piddle. And I go around the painting and just go, that looks like it could use a tweak. And this looks like maybe I'll just put a little bit more here, and I'll straighten up that line, and I'll do this, I'll do that. And here I was just using some Dr. P.H. Martin's, it was a white ink is basically what it is. It's a white ink. And it really gives you a nice crisp white line. So that's what I was doing. There was one of the masts was this stark white, and so I was trying to paint that in. Again, using my rigger, using the liner brush. This is a number 2 from Grumbacher. And anytime I need a very thin line, I use my number 2 from Grumbacher. So at this point, I was just looking at it. I was trying to figure out, what do you do? What do I need to do now? And of course, I wanted to put some texture in the sand, because it looked like there were some little footprints leading up to or away from the boat. And also, the shoreline is dotted with seashells and all kinds of little divots and dents. So that's what I was putting in. And I tried letting that dry. All right, and it was just very milquetoast. You can see that nice line, though, that happened when I painted that right to left as it goes up and out of the page. And then the boat is, of course, the center of your attention. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized I wasn't getting enough contrast. And so you can see I started doing more and more contrast. And this was the last picture. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. I actually worked on it some more later. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.